Hello guys, Evol here. In this tutorial I'm going to go over a basic platform game with you, and I'll show you what you need in the platform game to make it work, and include things like gravity and why you need gravity, etc, etc. Firstly, create a sprite called SPR player or whatever you want to call it, and this is going to be your moving sprite. Now, you can create two separate sprites for left and right, but I've just done two images in one sprite, left and right image. Now we've done that, we want to create our player, our object player. Link that up with your player sprite, and then go into a create a step event. I've done all this, pre-installment, so I can go over it with you guys quickly. First of all, go in the control tab and go top left, check empty. What this does is it checks the one pixel down relative to the player, and then it sets a gravity in a direction of 270, and the gravity is 0.5. This basically means that if the space is empty below the player, 1 pixel below the player, and it's not solid, then set the gravity to this amount in this direction. And for those of you who doesn't know, 270 is basically means down, so in a downward direction, down. Okay, so quickly to show you again, y1, x0, self, only solid, relative, okay, 270, 0.5, not relative, okay, and self. Then, in the control panel, again, click else. There's no properties for else, it's just a simple thing. So basically, if this isn't true, do this, yeah. So if there isn't, so basically, if there is a solid object, I will spit it out eventually. If there is a solid object, then if there is a solid object below the player, then set the gravity to 0, direction of 270, and then it restricts the vertical speed. So what we have to do is do that first. So set gravity again in move, direction 270, gravity 0. If vertical speed is equal to 10, that can be found here in test variable. So drag that in, if, and then type in variable v speed, value of 10 equal to itself, applies to self, then set variable v speed to 10, not relative to itself. Okay, now you won't, if you haven't added any left and right, keys, and nothing really will apply. But what this basically does is, because it's in the step event, the computer constantly checks these actions and are constantly doing them. So they're constantly checking for collisions and setting the gravity to 0.5 in the direction of 270, if that is true. And that's its job. And so yeah, now just add left and right events. These are fairly simple. I mean, you can do this a number of ways to manipulate movement, but I've just done change sprite, which can be found in, I believe, main 1. Yeah, main 1, in the tab main 1, change sprite, SPR player, which is your, and then subimage 0 at a speed of 1. You don't really have to have speed because it doesn't really come into it, but if you don't know what subimage is, I'll briefly go over it now. Basically, subimage, I tell it to go to the subimage 0. When I make my sprite, what I can do is have lots of different images, and if see the preview, it goes, it doesn't really make any sense, that, but what I can do is pick these individual subimages and use them. So in this case, I've picked image 0. So image 0 for left, and there, some image 0. So I hope that explains it to you. And then jump to position, -4, relative. You can do that, you can do it another way, it's up to you guys. And if there is collision, I don't know why I've added that there, it's not really necessary. But you guys can if you want to. So yeah, I'd just put it there. I would put that in actually, and I'll put it there above the jump to position, and yeah, that should be okay. Okay, because what that basically does, just to briefly explain, so -4x, 0y, only solid, relative. That basically checks the position to the left of the object itself, and if that's free, then it can go along and do this. Again, add the same things to the right, but instead of -4, +4, because it's the opposite way, it's the opposite direction. Okay guys, that's it then. You've added your gravity in the step event, you've added the left and right, so your player can now move left and right. But what you really want is to see the gravity in effect. You want it to see it, and the way to do that is to add a jump. Yeah, so you can have your jump in any sort of key you want, up, space, control, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Add this one here, and this is in the control panel, and check collision. The properties I want you to put in for this is x0, y1, only solid, relative, tipped, self, and it applies to self. Okay. That basically says if there is a collision with a solid object below 1 pixel below the player, then you can set the vertical speed to -10. So that's another one. In move, vertical speed, -10. There you go. So that's basically saying if we didn't have that action there, then the player will be able to jump in midair. I mean, maybe you would want that, I don't know, underwater or something. You can keep on swimming and jumping and minusing the vertical speed. But, you don't really want that in normal conditions. So basically that checks whether it's sitting on a solid object, and if it is, then it will do that. Okay guys, coming to a close now, but lastly, I want you to create an object, and this is going to be your wall object. Create a sprite for your wall. I've just created a really basic sprite, and call it object wall or object block or something. You don't need any events or actions in this, but what you do need is solid ticked, so make sure you have that ticked. And then after that, add a collision event with your wall or your block or whatever you called it. And then in the move tab, move to contact, drag that action in there and type in direction. So whatever direction it is, it will move to contact. Maximum speed 12, and it only applies against solid objects. And then finally set the vertical speed to 0. So basically, if it collides with the wall, it will move to contact with the wall, and when it lands on it, it will just set the vertical speed to 0. So it will look like it's just landed nice and soft on the wall. And that's about it. Oh no, one last thing I'll show you now is if you don't, I'll play the game without that, and so I've got a basic level layout here just to show you what happens. See, at the moment my sprite goes left and right, and the reason being is because when I press no key, it basically flips sprite constantly, because that's the remember when I press preview and it changes sprite like that? Well, that's what it's basically doing. So we don't want that, but I'll show you how to change it in just a sec. So we got jump, and the gravity pulls the player back down, and we've also got it so it collides with the player. It collides with the wall object to the left and the right, and it lands on it nice and soft like that. Okay, quick fix is no key. This is so it doesn't loop the animation constantly. So no key. You won't need this, by the way, if you create two separate sprites for left and right, but this is for if you've done it exactly like me. Then no key, change sprite, and then I've created a separate sprite for an idle stance. So there, sprite 2, and then what you'll find is when I go there, it's just an idle stance. See, what you will find is that it will do that if you press up, but a way to fix that again is just to change the sprite when you pressed up, and it will then work. Okay guys, I hope this tutorial has been helpful to you all. If you've got any questions, please just comment to my channel or comment below the video. Thanks a lot guys. Please rate and subscribe and whatever you guys do. Thanks. Bye.